Hello everyone, my name is AJ, and I haven't come up with a good intro line yet. If you watched all the way to the end of my amazing digital circus video, you will have heard that this video was supposed to be about purple shaggy Rogers with a knife. But that video is taking a lot longer than expected, so that'll have to be either next week or the week after that. While perusing commentary videos on YouTube, I found several videos talking about sister location. The lost potential of Ballora by Insightful Llama was particularly inspiring. After watching her video, I kept finding sister location criticism videos recommended to me. I also discovered that I've never had an original thought in my life. But also, it was a sign. So I thought I would finally tackle this game. Let's start with a quick summary. If I've done my job right, there should be a timestamp on screen for you to skip to if you don't want to hear all that. Night 1. This night is used to get you acquainted with the area. You move around the facility by using the vents because Fazbear Entertainment couldn't be bothered to pay for doors. Bellora's area is on the left, Funtime Foxy's area is on the right, Baby's area is straight ahead. Funtime Freddy doesn't have an area. This night, it gets you acquainted with the idea of controlled shocks, but unfortunately this mechanic is only used for a few spooks and doesn't actually have any gameplay value. As you're leaving the facility, you get a scripted vent shake scare that might spook you if you're going in completely blind. There's no real danger though. Night 2. This is easily the best night in the whole game. You check on the animatronics again and give them controlled shocks if they're not there. The power goes out when you reach Baby's room and then the game really begins. She starts talking to you and tells you to hide under the desk from the Biddy Babs. She says that this hidey hole was created by somebody who came before us, so that's an interesting piece of information that never gets explored ever again. After hiding, you get a little mini-game where you keep the Biddy Babs from opening up your hidey hole, which is really easy. You just click the edge of the metal piece and follow it with your mouse. It is kind of spooky to see their eyes through the metal holes, though. After this, you have to go through Ballora Gallery to reset the breaker. You have to listen for her music as she dances around and stops moving when she gets close. There's also a really scary part where she dances right in front of the door so you can actually see her. Unfortunately, this is a scripted scare that happens in exactly the same place every single time, so it loses all flavor if you die and have to see it again. After passing Ballora, you reach the breaker room. Funtime Freddy is also in this room for some reason. You can reset the breakers by clicking and holding them, but you do have to flip down your monitor occasionally. Funtime Freddy will try to get close to you, and you have to keep him away by playing voice lines from his little puppet. This was my favorite part of the whole game. I was scared, it felt fair when I lost, I felt like I was improving. It was great! 10 out of 10. Wish I could play a whole game of just that. After you restore power, you can run right through Bellora's room. Whether she doesn't realize you're there or chooses to let you go is unclear. I've heard that sometimes she sings a song, but I didn't hear it, so it must be a rare thing or something. Night 3. For this night, you need to perform some maintenance on Funtime Freddy. To get to parts and service, you need to go through Funtime Foxy's area. I had only ever watched playthroughs of Sister Location, and the gameplay for this particular area was really boring to watch, so I went into it expecting to not have a good time. As boring as it is to watch, it was actually really fun to play. I liked it. 8 out of 10. After getting into parts and service, you're given instructions on how to operate Funtime Freddy. There are some scripted jump scares here that are pretty spooky if you're not expecting them. Once you're done with Funtime Freddy, you have to click a button on his puppet to finish up. Unfortunately for your sanity, Bon Bon disappears, and you have to find him before the flashlight scares him away. I've heard from a bunch of different sister location videos that this part was really annoying and really frustrating, but I didn't think it was that bad. All you have to do is swing your flashlight in an L shape so he doesn't spawn down there, and then slowly rise up to Freddy's left shoulder. Wait till you see something red at the very edge of the light, then boop him before he gets away. A little annoying, but really not that bad. I got it on my first try. You can run through Funtime Auditorium, which will get you jump scared and sent straight into the next night. Night 4. In this night, you are trapped inside of a spring-locked suit while mini Renas try to eat your face. Baby admits to kidnapping you for some reason, Ballora dies, and you lose your sanity because this part sucks. You have to wind up 5 spring locks on each side and wiggle to keep the mini Renas off your booty, but wiggling makes the spring locks loosen. This minigame isn't that bad until the last 10 seconds when it becomes ridiculously unfair. A common trend with Sister Location. At exactly 2 minutes and 50 seconds, the spring locks wind down so fast that it's nearly impossible to keep your face not crushed. I died at exactly the same spot every single time. It didn't feel possible at all. I got so angry that I closed my computer and walked away to go do chores because that seemed more fun to me, and when I came back this game had somehow beat itself. Thank goodness, because that was awful. Night 5. On night 5, all of the animatronics except Baby are gone. You have to go to Parts and Service to type in a code, grab a thing, then follow some of Baby's instructions to get unstuck. This minigame was infuriating to me because I forgot what the keypad looked like and had the numbers upside down in my mind's eye. Once I figured out what I was doing wrong, it wasn't as bad. It was still pretty frustrating though because the keypad is so small and Sister Location is one of those games that gives you a cursor that is really big for no reason. Also, the game tells you to put the code in carefully and then jump scares you for being too slow. Those seem like conflicting instructions to me. Also, every time you die, you get sent back to the very beginning of the night, and you have to run all the way back to Parts and Service, which gets pretty annoying pretty quickly. Night 5 is the sequel. In order to get the secret ending, you have to play a minigame that occasionally pops up when you get killed. Thankfully, you can also access this minigame through a little secret in the bottom left-hand corner in the extras menu, so thank goodness, because this minigame is really hard. You have 1 minute to deliver cupcakes to children. You only have just enough cupcakes for each kid, and there are 3 different types of cupcakes that you can use. You have to use a combination of logic and fairly challenging platforming in order to complete this game. There were 2 jumps in this game that went between screens that were impossible to see, so you need to memorize the map in order to complete this game. The amount of times where I fell off the map in these exact 2 places was absolutely ridiculous. Unlike Night 4 though, this game always felt possible, even with the stupidly short time limit. Seriously, with how slow your character moves, the difference between winning and losing is a fraction of a second. Beating this game took me an hour and a half to do. It was awful, and never again. After you beat this minigame, you can play the alternate ending. You play through Night 5 as normal, but when it's time to go get scooped, you run to the right diagonal to get to the office known as the private room. Here you get to play a round of classic Five Nights at Freddy's gameplay. You have the classic doors as well as a vent in the middle. The only animatronic you need to defend yourself from is Ennard. They have around 12 sound cues for every time they move. I know it's possible to beat Ennard without using cameras at all, but I haven't gotten a good enough handle on their sound cues or mechanics to be able to do that yet. In fact, I haven't been able to beat Ennard at all. I wanted to do that before I recorded the script for this video, but it's just not going to happen. The hardest part about this night is power. Power goes down by 1% roughly every 10 seconds without using any monitors or doors. You have to survive for 9 full minutes. This gives each minute a little more than 10% power that you can use. Without using any doors or cameras, you lose 54% of your power. This only gives you 46% of power to use, and it is unforgiving. Ennard has the ability to move every 10 seconds at 12 a.m., every 6 seconds from 1 to 3, every 2 seconds from 4 to 5 a.m., with the chance of him increasing every hour. This makes the difficulty ramp up really fast once you're near the end. The closest I've come to winning is within 5 seconds, and it's because I ran out of power just a little too soon. This wouldn't be too bad if you didn't have to start the entire night from the very beginning in order to get back to the fight. You have to run all the way through Funtime Auditorium, listen to Hand Unit's dialogue again, put in the code with the finicky mouse, wait for Baby to go to the scooping room, then run back to the room to get another shot at a really hard boss fight that I think I was on for about 30 seconds longer than it needed to go for. All of this frustration because our Lord and Savior Scott Cawthon couldn't be bothered to put more than one checkpoint in the entire game. This is really too bad because I really like the Ennard Night. I just wish it wasn't so annoying to get back to so I could actually have some fun even though I'm bad at games. Custom Night. Unfortunately, I did not get to play Custom Night before making this video because you have to 100% the main game in order to unlock it. I did watch the King's video on it though, so I can still have some opinions. I like that Yendo and Lolbit are here. Both of these characters are Easter eggs that have a pretty rare chance of appearing in your game, so I like that they're here to fill out the roster a little bit more. I wish Ennard were here. Does it make sense with all of the animatronics he's made out of also being here? No. Do I care? Also no. I think it's very weird the Baby isn't here. I originally thought this was done because, spoilers, you play as Mike Lafton, which is the brother to the spirit possessing Baby, except that she does attack you in other games, so it still doesn't make sense. I don't like that in a game that's supposed to be about Baby, she's not on the cover, and the only in-game render of her is that awful keypad minigame. Also, Mini-Rena 2. They grab on your face and make it hard to see, and that's it. Were these really necessary? Now that we've gone over the game, we can finally talk about art stuff. I've always thought that the character designs of the animatronics in this game were kind of weird. They're great from a horror standpoint, and they've got a great concept behind them, but all of these do not look like they were made for children at all. I don't think leaning so hard into them looking like robots was the right direction to go in. If this was set farther into the future, it would be fine, but this is somewhere between the late 70s and early 90s. These animatronics don't look like they were drawn at all before they were modeled. They're mostly all the same height except for Baby, who is way too big for some reason. In order to make this less noticeable, they were put on differently heighted stages in the trailer and were never seen together in game. The circus theming also doesn't really show on any of them except for Baby. Baby is obviously a clown, but then we have a ballerina, a puppeteer, and of course, the iconic circus attraction that is repurposed makeup tester Fox. She just looks so dumb. Other than the bear trap faces, these designs aren't that interesting when put up next to other Five Nights at Freddy's characters. I got started by drawing all of the sister location animatronics together on a heart chart sheet. This is what I do anytime I design a cast of characters. Anytime you have more than one character, they should be drawn next to each other at least once to make sure that they all have visually distinct silhouettes, but they also look like they're part of a set unless they're specifically not supposed to be that way. Putting them all together on a chart like this also helps with making sure all of your colors look good together without having to give all of them the exact same color palette. I started with the main four, then did Ennard, the Biddy Babs, a Mini Rhea, Lulbit, and finally Yendo. I didn't do Funtime Chica because she only appears in Ultimate Custom Night and it doesn't work from a story standpoint, but we'll get into that in a different video. You'll probably already noticed by now that I've made some massive changes to the animatronics. Firstly, where are all the faceplates? Don't worry, they're still there. To make these animatronics more appropriate for children, I've decided to put a layer of fake fur or skin over top of their metal shells. This will make them more huggable and approachable for little kids, which would make them better at capturing them. Oh, spoilers, I guess, the game's like 7 years old by now. These animatronics were made to capture children by stuffing them inside them to save for later. We'll come back to the lore, don't you worry. Let's start by breaking down the original in a little more detail. Baby is a little too big. Like, maybe a lot too big. Like, just way too big. She's enormous compared to all of the other characters, and it just looks weird. A child would not like this. A child would be terrified of being eaten by this. They even acknowledge this in the actual game, which makes it a little better, but still, no child is going to want to approach this thing. It was way scarier than they think. Ultimately, I changed the least about her, though. I kept her concept nearly identical, but changed the execution a little bit so she doesn't look so ugly. I kept her faceplate somewhat visible, but I gave her a flat mask with the face painted on. I made her a lot smaller than the other four. Her name is Baby. She ought to be tiny. To fit more with the circus theme, I had her dispense candied apples instead of ice cream. I know that they have ice cream at carnivals, but I wanted to go all in on the circus theme. Instead of the fan in the center, I gave her one of those clown flowers that spit water in your face. I also gave her really big pants and shoes. I think the animatronics would wear actual clothes instead of the metal bits. It would be a lot less expensive to make, and it would look better. Now, since this animatronic is supposed to be able to store a human child inside of her, where exactly is it going to go? Well, you know those LOL surprise doll things? Yeah, they come in this skin-tight covering that hides which doll they are. I think it would be something like that, where these animatronics are perfectly fit sarcophaguses for their human prisoners. Oh, I also drew her with, like, what I imagine her new jump scare would be. It's just a standard, the mask opens up with the faceplates and she bites you, that kind of thing. Okay, now Ballora. I've always thought that Ballora looked really ugly too. She looks like Afton was trying way too hard to make a dominatrix, but she's not pretty at all. She is also far too robotic looking to fall quite into the uncanny valley in a way that is scary to me personally. Maybe for other people she is scary, but it just doesn't hit. Her woman chest is definitely the worst part of her design. Come on, this isn't appropriate for kids today. Do you know how prudish they were back then? The amount of parents that complained about this is probably the real reason why Ballora got scooped, not her inability to act normal. The entire thing needed to be scrapped, even down to her concept. There are no ballet dancers in the circus. I changed her into a regular acrobat and made her outfit a lot more modest. I gave her a thick tutu and some fishnets below her knees, on her forearms, and on her midsection for some added interest, and to give her some more visual similarity to her original design. I kept the bun the way it was. Instead of making her and baby's hair out of metal like in the original, it would be made out of regular doll hair. Instead of the painted mask like baby, Bella's face would be made out of the same type of foam that cosplayers use to make their fursuit heads. This foam would be glued onto her faceplates, and then it would be carved to make her facial features like her nose, her lips, and her eyes and stuff like that. She would have a layer of cloth over top of this that would have her facial features painted on. I gave her yellow eyeshadow and blush marks to make sure she fit in with the rest of the cast. I also added polka dots to her skirt so it didn't look so much like a hard mustard mass. I made Ballora the tallest in the cast for a very specific reason. Mrs. Afton. We don't know very much about Mrs. Afton, not even her first name, but we know she existed at one point. There's a popular theory that Ballora contains Mrs. Afton, but as far as I know, there's never been any solid proof about that. It's the direction I'd like to go with, though. I think Mrs. Afton would be a very tall woman because I want that to be a reality, so I made Ballora really tall also. That way she can fit Mrs. Afton's body inside of her without mangling it too much. For her jump scare, I think that she would take the time to remove the cloth piece that has her face painted on first before she chomps you. I just think that it just seems like it would be way scarier than just the standard chomp. Funtime Freddy was the easiest to design, although I did make a lot of changes to its concept. First one, Bon Bon gone now. I thought of something better for him. Circuses used to have bears. Not just dancing bears either, bears that rode bikes. Freddy is a bear. He ought to have a bike. Giving him a bike and a puppet hand was too much, so instead I gave him some itty-bitty plushies and his feather boa that he would hand out to kids as prizes. I also gave him pants. Unfortunately, I do have to mention that circuses used to treat their animals really badly. I can't mention animals in the circus and not bring up this issue. That would be irresponsible. More than 40 countries have banned the use of animal performers. The US has a mix of full bans and partial bans on the use of animals in circus, as well as bans on particular practices. It's too bad we live in reality, because a bike riding bear would be really cute if it wasn't going home to a cage that's too small at the end of the day. Let's talk about something less depressing. Fictional child unaliving. Funtime Freddy is very big, not as tall as Ballora, but thick, wide, large, chunky. He can fit so many kids in there. He would be the best at capturing children because he could fit so many. He can fit at least one in each leg and two in his chest cavity if he doesn't mind squishing them together really hard. For his jump scare, I didn't want him to have the same standard opening of the faceplates like the others do. I wanted to make him a little more unique. Instead of the faceplates opening up, his chest cavity would open up and he would shove you in there with his nasty human hands. Okay, on to Foxy. Funtime Foxy was the most unnecessary addition to the cast. Their design is just so boring. It's just Mangle again, but not torn apart this time. It feels to me like they were put in here mostly for furry bait because Foxy is the fan favorite. Their design does the absolute least in terms of new direction. This is only emphasized more in the custom night because they have the exact same mechanic as the OG Foxy, but more annoying. With the enormous majority of furries being some kind of canine, any new canine furries need to do a lot more in order to stand out. When I looked up circus outfits, I saw this picture of a spotted hat and a matching tie, so that was my inspiration. I gave them a purple suit top and a tie with a bell at the top instead of a knot, because I am cringe. I decided to give them curly hair that resembles an afro. I considered making it rainbow, but decided to go with just purple to keep together with my rainbow theming that I had going on for them. I also gave them a sheer spotted skirt for some extra flair. It's pretty heavily debated whether Funtime Foxy is a girl or a boy. They're referred to with both male and female pronouns by the voiceover, so I had to make an executive decision. This is the 70s and the 90s. They didn't do non-binary representation like we do today, especially in children's entertainment. So it doesn't make any sense for Funtime Foxy to be non-binary or gender fluid like so many people headcanon them to be. Funtime Foxy is wearing lipstick, they're pink, they're included on the Ladies' Night Challenge and the Custom Night. What more evidence do you need? Ignore Han Unit's voice lines, he's never right about anything anyway. Foxy's a girl. I gave Foxy some purple lipstick, although I toned it way down so it doesn't look as ugly as it did on the original. I also gave them eyeshadow, some earrings, and some light clown type pink and blue patterning across their forearms and calves. Since I couldn't find anything about foxes being commonly used in circuses as anything specific, I decided to take Freddy's gimmick and give it to Foxy. Now Foxy has Bonbon. I also gave them Bonette, who is a character that only appears in the custom night. She's basically just a color swap version of Bonbon. I think that if something is going to appear in the custom night, it ought to appear in the game too. So now Foxy has two puppets. I wanted to give Bonbon and Bonnet an obvious character dynamic so you can get a good idea of what they're like during puppet shows. I gave Bonbon a little suit, straightened ears, and an energetic facial expression. He is ready to perform. Bonnet, on the literal other hand, is still in her nightgown. Her ears are hanging forward, her eyes are only open by a sliver, but she still took the time to put on her makeup and eyeshadow, because this is the 80s, and that's just how they drew female characters at the time. How are you supposed to tell if they're a girl if they're not dripping in lipstick and pink? As stupid as it is from a realism standpoint, I think it looks really cute and silly. It reminds me of when I was a kid.
Hey, editing AJ here. I forgot to mention, Funtime Foxy's jump scare. For her jump scare, instead of having her take off the fur like I had Laura take off her skin, I had her just rip through it because she's just that excited to kill you. Moving on.
Lilbit is another character. That's the end of that sentence. Though they weren't in the base game, they were included in the custom night. They would appear on the monitors and you would have to type out LOL to get rid of them, otherwise they would cover your entire screen. And this definitely doesn't date the game at all. This led me to headcanon that they were some animatronic programming that was never used. I didn't want them to look like just another color palette slapped Funtime Foxy, so I removed their entire body, only keeping the head and part of their spine. I kept their colors the same and added a glitch effect behind them, and they were done. Yendo was the last animatronic that wasn't entered. Yendo looking like the muscle structure of Freddy Fazbear is pretty cool at first, but it's just that. He doesn't have a unique silhouette, so he doesn't really feel like his own character. He just looks naked, and it's not that scary. You know, I just thought, maybe, what if Yendo is the endoskeleton that's supposed to be in Golden Freddy, but never was removed for some reason? He does have the same mechanics as Golden Freddy in the custom night. Anyway, I thought I would take this concept of Freddy endoskeleton and push it a little bit farther. To me, Yendo reads as an unfinished project. Maybe Afton was making another Funtime animatronic, but after the little baby incident, he canceled the project. It would also make some sense as to why Lilbit exists. They were going to go into the head of another animatronic, but since it was all canceled, it never happened. I decided to make him really skinny and scrawny and skeletal. If he was supposed to be a Funtime animatronic, having a smaller endoskeleton would be ideal for stuffing more children into the suit. I also gave him a bunch of wires hanging off him so we could get some more color in there. I think he would dangle from the ceiling and get around through the vents. Him dangling from the ceiling would definitely make it scarier when he appears in your office instead of just standing around like a toddler that got up in the middle of the night to ask you for some milk. And finally we can get to Ennard. Ennard, my baby girl. Ennard is all of the animatronics smushed together with the intention of becoming your new organs. I like Ennard's OG design, I really do. But again, it suffers from doesn't communicate its concept very well syndrome. Despite all of the bits hanging off it, it still seems a little too well put together for having been made by animatronics out of those same animatronics. When I was designing him, I thought about how animatronics could realistically build another one of themselves that would be small enough to fit inside of a person without distorting their skin too much. From what we know about Ruminant, aka Ghost Juice, it attaches itself to the metal directly, so they can't just upload their code into any old body. In order to make Ennard, the animatronics would need to give up parts of their endoskeleton and then upload their code into its head. We know that Baby is possessed by Elizabeth Afton, aka William Afton's daughter, and we also know that she has memories from when she was just a robot. These two parts of each other have merged together into a jumbled mess so that it's impossible to tell where one ends and the other begins. I would imagine that the spirit of William's daughter would be attached to both metal and code, so it would be necessary to transfer both to Ennard to preserve baby. I color-coded each of Ennard's body parts to the animatronic it came from. I also put it on all fours. Walking on 2 legs is actually a very complex way of moving as compared to walking on 4 legs because you need to have a very precise balance. Precise balance that Ennard just isn't going to have. With so many brains in one body and all of them wanting to use the body their way, they would have to completely relearn how to walk, which would take months. So them becoming Ennard in just 1 week and then trying to walk around, it's just not going to work. It would probably be easier if they all agreed to be in charge of just their own limb until they got into their skin suit. This would make them a pain to animate, but so cool to look at. I think they would move around in a very similar way to Mommy Longlegs from Poppy Playtime, but without the ability to stretch out like she does. In the finished art I did for them, I did have them stand on 2 legs, but let it be known, their arm is holding onto the ceiling in order to keep them from falling over. While I was working on redesigning Ennard, I thought I might as well change the scooper while I'm at it. The scooper is not an intimidating machine. It doesn't look sharp at all. This thing would not do a good job of removing either animatronic endoskeletons or human ones. It's a very blunt looking object, so although getting hit with it would probably still kill you, it's not going to gut you the way Ennard wants it to. I switched it instead to a standard buzzsaw, which would be made for slicing through the metal coatings of the animatronics. They probably wouldn't be too keen on opening up their chest cavities for people looking to disassemble them, so they would need this for when one of them was acting up. This would also do a better job of getting through your skin so that Ennard can turn you into a nice jack-o'-lantern to inhabit. I also changed the way the ending does just a little bit so that instead of Michael Afton just standing there waiting to get scooped and die, Ennard actually catches him first. So you get a nice Ennard jump scare and then you wake up tied to a table about to be buzzsawed. Moving on. I saved the Biddy Babs and the mini arenas for last because I just didn't care about them very much. I kept the mini arena pretty much the same. I just gave it some hair because I wanted to. The Biddy Babs were inspired by these tiny little clown earrings I found, at least until I decided I hated them and completely redid them. After watching Markiplier's Sister Location custom night video, I realized that one Biddy Bab is a girl and the other is an Electro Bab, whatever that means. Their hair was inspired by Thing 1 and Thing 2 from Dr. Seuss, very vaguely, and the rest of them was just messing around until it looked right. You already know how I feel about color swap designs, so I gave Biddy Bab a hat and a couple extra orbs. I put some differences in their hair also. I gave them the same color palette but shuffled the percentages around so they looked completely different. Electrobab did swap out the bright red for a very light blue though. With all of our characters designed, this is where we're gonna have to be done for the video. I would like to go through all the changes I'd make to the gameplay and the story, but the script is already 16 pages long and I really need to talk about something else already. I'll just have to see you all next week in a super cool video about not Five Nights at Freddy's. Bye-bye!